Okay, so as always, we will start with a bow. Evening, Joanna. You made it.
Hi, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
1 minute,
No
2 minutes late.
No worries. Okay, so we're going to do a centering. So I just need you to stand or sit or whatever it is that you like to do to be comfortable. I'm going to ask you to keep your eyes open and I'm going to guide you through this. So I just want you to make yourself comfortable in the first instance. And I want you to notice what you can see. Now, I really want you to open your eyes and see what you can see. So what did you not notice the first time? That when you really kind of relax and settle, perhaps comes to your attention. And what can you hear?
Seems that one has a wider view of the space around you once you relax. Yeah. Before it's more narrow.
Yeah. And hopefully the same will be with hearing. So what can you hear? And maybe as you're listening, just focus on your breathing. And see if anything else draws your attention that perhaps you didn't notice the first time. And this one the ladies are probably better at. What can you smell? And again, as you calm down, you're noticing anything that perhaps wasn't there before. Now what can you feel? And where can you feel it?
Feel a warmth in my fingers.
Great. Okay, now really calm down and see if there's anything else you notice that's going on that you didn't bother to pay attention to before.
I feel the back of my neck.
Okay. Good. And if you think about your temperature, what do you notice? And did you notice it before? Now maybe you can focus on your balance. How stable do you feel? Are you using your structure to the best advantage? Okay, I'm going to bring you kind of back to the room. And I think you're already beginning, you were reporting it, but you probably noticed that the more you calmed down and paid attention, the more information you got. Yeah. So the relevance of that skill is that when someone grabs you, what do you really notice? As all your attention floods to the grab, and then you don't notice everything else that's going on in your body and what you can or can't do. Because it's quite natural to have your attention go to the grab, but actually you want to cultivate a skill where you still have this body awareness and sense awareness of your relationship with your partner, So you know what's available to you to solve the puzzle that's in front of you, the one that's grabbed you. Okay, any feedback or thoughts on that? Or shall I just move straight on? I hope I hit the record button. Did I say I was going to hit record? It is recording. Yeah, good, excellent. Okay, so we're going to look at some circular movement tonight. And we're just going to start with a wrist exercise, okay? So basically you're going to swing your arm in front of you, and as you do this, you're going to make a figure of 8. So if you watch carefully, you can see the palm of my hand, and as I go around the corner, you can now see the back of my hand. As I pass that hip, it opens up again, and then it closes. It opens, and it closes. It opens, and it closes. And as you get the hang of this, just build up the speed and feel the flow of the movement. And I can see a number of you are starting to introduce your hips, which is great. So let your hips begin to turn as well. So you get a full flow. And then, if you like, and if you have room, you can grab a Joe, and you can do the same thing with the Joe in your hand. If you haven't got a Joe or you haven't got room for that, a pencil, a cucumber, a banana, I think you can lay your hands on. You've got space to just feel the flow of movement, circular movement. I love the flow of these types of exercises. I feel very energetic to me. And you should find that your arm never goes beyond your hips. It's always slightly in front, that you're turning your hip to make sure that your elbow doesn't disappear behind your hip. Okay, you can just slow it down. And if you're feeling brave, swap hands. And slide down. And come to a standstill. Okay, so now we'll look at kind of the oldest exercise in the book, Tiny. Andrew, could you just put your microphone on mute if it's not? Is it on mute? Okay, fine. It's not playing, it's not showing me, and I was trying to do it in speaker view so that people could get a better view of what I was doing. That's okay. I'm going to do Tiny. If you've got a chair or a desk in front of you, I just want you to rest your hand here. And you're going to have to pretend that somebody's grabbed your wrist. So if I push it against the chair or the desk or whatever you've got in front of you, you should feel the chair in this. You can feel the clash. Your job is to leave your hand where it is and to bring your body around it. Swap sides. So there's no push into the space of the chair. There should be no push into the space of our partner either. We want them not to feel what's going on with where they've grabbed, but we have our full body available to turn around and get by their side. Now I'm in their position, I can start to do things. And I've got really close to the chair. I don't want to be there. If you like, you can practice. What does it feel like when you're a long way from the chair? I can feel me having to stretch to reach them, as opposed to how it feels when I get real close, where I feel I'm in real control. I don't know if you can pick this detail up, but my hands are facing inwards like that. They're not outwards. I immediately know that if I turn my wrists outwards and someone were to take me in the direction where my fingers were pointing, I would go off over there. Whereas when my fingers are pointing very slightly inwards, that wouldn't have the same impact. In fact, they couldn't do it. So just build up a little bit of speed. So I turn my foot movement, my back leg moves first. I swivel it round and I put it more or less parallel with the leg of the chair, and then I bring the other leg back. And I step out, other leg, the back leg, hips round. Hips have begun to turn. To accommodate the turn, I need to then let the other foot come round. Back leg, hips round. There's a lovely circle around my hips, which I want to keep as tight as possible. Now entering just a turn and then a step back really. So the way I'm doing it assumes that someone's clamping down on my wrist. How does the movement change if they're pushing in? Thoughts? Okay, so the energy now is traveling in this direction, not that direction. So here, it's very hard to do. Well, what you have to do is you have to just turn your fingers in line with the arm of my chair and then pivot. So on the first one, this hand tends to slide down a bit because you're agreeing with their clamp down. But if they're just trying to enter your space, the only bit you can really move is this, and you let them push the arm. If they're coming with momentum, they will come to you. You don't need to step in. But we're assuming a low level of energy where they don't actually step, but they're literally pushing in a direct line into my front hip or center. So the fingers move, I leave the arm, and I come to here. Fingers is all I can move. I can't go down because they don't want to go down. I can't go up because they don't want to go up. They want to go forward. So I agree with that. And then the same movement. What do we do if someone tries to lift our hand? Not a bad approximation, Finn. We do go in an upwards direction. So if someone were trying to lift my hand, Lord knows why they would do that, but if they did, I agree with their opinion. And because I'm beneath them, they'll end up more stretched than me, and then I drop down and then I come in. So you go up, I rock back a little bit, I drop down, and in I come. This doesn't feel quite as stable as when I create some space and I rock back. And then I drop down and I come in. Up, down, and in. Up, down, and in. Again, my fingers are slightly triangular, pointing towards my center line. My elbows are tight to my body. So if you're like that, it's not right. If someone were to grab my elbow and pull outwards, it'd be very hard to resist it. But here, they're not going to shift me. Any questions or problems with that? It's a basic exercise, but it's just worth thinking about because it's so crucial. We always want to get to our partner's side, and in this, it literally is you're getting to your partner's side and getting out of the way of the line of attack. Any feedback or questions or Thoughts?
No.
I really like that. First of all, when I draw my fingers, when I started circling,
Yeah.
my body just turns to the opening space and to the movement. So it's like the pointing finger. It shows the direction.
Yes.
And also when I lifted up my hand, it's just like another impulse to turn it. So it's much more power over there.
As you lift, you want to kind of connect. You want to connect with their hand like that. That's when you know you've created some tension in their body, and they're going to want to go down at that point in time. If you could just go halfway up, you don't have that same connection. And the reason to lift is because you're following them, but also to keep the connection going. Yeah.
That phrase "agreeing" is a nice way to think of the energy. It's not submitting or following or leading.
Well, if you think about it, the instinctive reaction is to pull away from whatever they're trying to do, isn't it? You know, to resist them if they're pushing in, or to go down if they're trying to lift you up. But actually, we want to go exactly with what they're doing. They've given us some connection. We want to maintain the connection. Okay. So now we're just going to do a turning exercise. So I like to start with my left foot forward. Now my left hand is kind of across my center, and my right hand is just dangling behind me. Okay. Your first movement is like you're drawing a sword, fully extended. There. Okay. If you go to there, it will feel very different and uncomfortable. It needs to be where there's no tension in your shoulder. So don't swing and then let your body follow. You're going to get to here, and at this point, your body will follow. So I'll do a front on one. Slowly. One. With nice extension through the front arm and the back arm. And then I turn. And it's like I switched hands with the sword and I put it back in the scabbard. Out it comes. Out it comes. And they're going sideways, just in case it's any different. 1, 2, 1, 2. But you notice my stance. I start in handling. I draw. Back leg comes around, just like the Tanahiko that we did. After that, it's front leg first, because I draw my front foot back, so then the movement comes off the front foot first. So don't finish here. Finish here. Slightly leaning in. All your attention is in the direction that you're now facing. At the moment, I turn, all my attention is forward. And now all my attention is in this direction. And it's very important that as you're turning, your direction of energy is in the direction that you're traveling. Yep. If you do that, you end with a nice crisp finish. And then right at the end, you switch 100% of your energy the other way. If I don't do that, I'll fall backwards. Instead of thinking about that direction, you'll find that you feel off balance. So do it wrong, so you can feel the difference to actually switching that energy 100% the other way. And then do it right. Switch. 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 And then in an effort to layer it a bit and make it a little bit more difficult, you put 2 turns in if you can manage it. So you might have to take smaller steps. But I've got enough room to do 2 circles. So 1, 2, draw up. 1, 2, draw up. 1, 2, draw up. 1, 2, and turn on my Joe. 1, 2, and draw up. I'm going to try and use this line down the middle of my mat to check that my direction is good. I want to finish on that line. And I want to be traveling along the line. And then if you like, you can go out in the garden and you can do as many turns as you can manage. But I'll leave you to play with that in your own time. What do we think about the power of circular movement? What do we notice when we're turning in a circle? Thoughts?
You have to be careful to keep your center,
Yes.
otherwise you'll overbalance.
Yes. I quite like the word center when we're talking about circular movement, because just the word center suggests at least a circle, if not a sphere, doesn't it? And the whole reason we start with a centering movement is because we kind of want to be right in the middle of things and have a clear eye on everything that's going on around us. Yeah. If we're too near one edge, we miss what's going on the far edge, etc., etc. So it's quite pictorial for me, this idea of centering. And where's the quiet place to be in circular movement?
In the middle of the circle.
Tantien.
Well, it is the tantien, but absolutely, if we think of the geometry of it, it's right in the middle. If you have a tornado, right in the middle, it's still. And as it builds up power and goes outwards, that's where you really feel the effects. But right in the middle of the storm, the eye of the storm, as we call it, it's a place of stillness. But it's the place where all that power is being generated from. So that's the same for us too. So I quite like that as a picture as well. And do you know the difference between centrifugal and centripetal force?
Yeah.
Do you want to give us a definition, Andrew?
Centrifugal force is coming from the center outwards.
Yeah. And centripetal?
That's coming from the out in.
Yeah. And if you want to start getting into the physics of it, they're an equal and opposite force.
Yeah.
So when you have centrifugal force, there is always centripetal force too. There's something holding them to the center. So if you think about the planets orbiting around the sun, they don't keep going outwards, outwards, outwards. Gravity pulls them into where their position is in relation to the sun. They orbit around that sun. And we're the center of all this movement. So albeit that people are feeling like they're being spun away from us, we need to hold them into us too. Yep, so it's really important that you don't get ahead of them. There's kind of an equal pull in both directions. So if I'm going at 90 miles an hour and then they're going at 10 miles an hour, it's too much. They won't be able to keep up with that. You have to adjust your speed to the power that they're giving you accordingly. Okay, any questions?
Just a comment.
Yeah.
I always try to imagine that when I'm circling, that I'm not circling on one leg with the other leg spinning around like a compass,
Yes.
but I'm actually circling on my center.
Thank you. That's a really good point. When I get my students to do this exercise, where they go from one corner of the mat to the other, so they should be able to put 4 or 5 turns in, you'll always find somebody who's doing this. They're kind of jumping as they go. And it just doesn't look very smooth or controlled. And there's probably one reason for that. It's not very smooth or controlled. Okay, so the energy is straightforward. So I want to keep my feet very close to the ground. I'm not pivoting on one leg. There's always one point that's in contact with the ground, but the other one stays very, very low so that I've got freedom of movement. So I don't really feel, I mean, you're saying you like to imagine that you've got, you don't want the other leg spinning out of control, and you're absolutely right. You don't want it spinning out of control. Okay. So the last exercise we'll look at is just this feeling of circular movement. Okay, so I think we may have done this. I want your arm to be nice and relaxed, not too high. The elbow should be, there should be a bit of bend in the elbow, it should look L-shaped to you. There used to be a ventriloquist that had an emu as a dummy, okay? And I like to imagine that this is my emu and it is turning to have a look at me. Oh? So your wrist should be quite soft, yeah? You don't want the emu looking up in the sky, you want him looking forward or looking at you, but not really, because we're not doing a comedy show here. And then you just let your arm fall and come back up. And then you can build it up. And just feel how the power builds as you do it. But your hand should be falling in front of your center line. You don't want it too far across. You don't want it out here. You don't want your arm dropping behind you. As I drop down, the elbow stays by my side and my hand stays slightly in front of my body. So now if you use your peripheral vision to follow your hand, is it in front of your body all the time? Can you see it throughout the circle? And then I can do the other side. So for me, there's a tremendous feel of flow and energy in an exercise like that. When might we use that in our aikido? Thoughts?
Ikkyo?
Ikkyo, kind of, but in the other way, the other direction, you would have a little bit of circular movement. But it wouldn't be so much this sideways shape, it would be more of a forward circle. Yeah. And I'd obviously need my body to be following my arm, otherwise I'd kind of throw myself over. So for me, it would be something like a kokanagi. This hand would be on the shoulder, this is dropping either on the elbow or the hand, and then I'm driving the arm. So what I don't want is, and I lose contact, I want to go down, and as they kind of come up, I sit on top. Yeah. So you imagine that their body's in a nice stable place. If I drop this down, their body comes forward. They're going to want to come back up. It's a bit like a horse going over a jump. The jockey doesn't want to leave the horse. It wants to stay on the back of the horse. Okay. So you go down and then you ride it on the way up, and then there will be another down maybe to finish the technique. Or you might go over the top at that point in time, depending on what you feel is right. You might just drop them on the first one, actually, depending on what their balance is like. I'll probably just drop them on the first one, thinking about it. But it is a...
Kaitenage also.
Yes,
Kaitenage.
Yeah, there's a little bit of it in kokanagi. There's that same feeling of the drop. Definitely. So on this, we're focusing really on the sort of circular feel of this. But it's a real good observation to notice how strong it feels on the down. Yeah, but because it's attached to your shoulder, it doesn't actually leave your body, does it? So the energy has to go somewhere, which is why it spins back up if you allow it to, because you've created something, it can't turn into nothing. Okay, so any other circular exercises you can think of that we can play with?
the sort of Yokoman movement.
Yeah, that's a good one. All right, so with Yokoman, imagine that there's this is the sword that's pointing at me. Okay, so clearly I don't want to enter because that's going to give them their desire. I'm gonna die. But I want them to think they've got a chance. So the first bit of energy is forwards. It's forwards. You want to encourage them to thrust, and then I turn off. So sorry, let's do the cuts as well. So the hand comes up. With showman, it will be straight down. On this occasion, if I do that, I'm going to die. I need to get round the sword. So this comes up, and then this pivots round, and I finish the cut on my centre line in full control. So if I miss that time, I've got something else I can do, perhaps. So I'm in Hamni. Little step forward and I send my energy forwards. Remember that energy we tried to create on the circular movement where it's very directional, it's right in front of you while you're turning. It's like that really strong feeling of irimi. And this hand comes up at the same time as I enter. And then I pivot my hips. So I just come off the line and I'm chopping, well, the idea is that I chop through their neck. It's kind of 45-degree angle. We're looking at it from a martial perspective, so it's a bit brutal. Forward energy, hand up. This pivot takes you around the sword and allows you to complete the cut. You do it on the other side, energy in, hand up, pivot the hip, round and down. Energy up, forwards, hand up, around and down. And again, the circularity gives it a lot of power. Forward and up, around and down. How are we feeling? Are we feeling empowered?
Yep.
That's what we're looking for anyway. So if you find that you're going so fast that your kind of body leans, falls forward as you're cutting, you've done, that's wrong. Slow it down till you feel in total control of the movement. So it's the usual advice that whatever you do, start slowly and build it up so that the more in the end, you can increase your power, you can increase your speed, but still feel as centered and in control as you did when you were doing it from a very basic move. Yep. And it's good to use your imagination on what particular problem you're trying to solve. So a sword pointing straight at your throat. If I come forward, most of us, you get the equal and opposite reactions. That's why you send your energy forward. That's giving the opening to go around the side. If they're holding my hand down, then I go with that. If they're lifting it up, I go with that. If they're looking to come in, I go with that. So we're always looking to go where our partner wants to go. But we need to make sure that we're safe at the same time. Okay, so I'm just going to open up for comment, feedbacks, anything you want to offer, because I think I'm done on circular movements.
What do you do with your back foot in the your command?
What do you do with your back foot?
You give one step forward, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yes, it is one step forward. So, one, that's the straight bit. When I finish, it's like I've got hand on the other side. Yeah?
Yeah, you don't take it a little bit to the side so you get out of the line.
No, not really. Okay, so here's my opponent. And they're directly in front of me. 1, This is where I am. I'm very slightly to the side of this person's body as I cut. Yeah, but when I finish, I will be here, but then their head will be off. And because we're nice, we usually remember not to cut through the head. We usually stop at the neck. You know, sometimes with Caitlin, I go a bit wild, but you know, she usually deserves it, so that's fair enough. Yeah. So always, I think the rule is that you don't want any more separation from your partner than is absolutely necessary. You don't want this gapping. You still want good connection, and you want to get as close as you can whilst being safe. Yeah.
And also you want a sort of balance of movement. You don't want it all going in one direction. As one is going forward, one is balancing it going back.
Yeah, absolutely. There are two halves to a circle, and they both have to be moving at the same time. Yeah, you know, as soon as you become disconnected with your whole body, then things start to go wrong. In Aikido, if a bit of you moves, all of you moves. As soon as you let one bit go and you forget to follow, that's when you're vulnerable. So the idea is, if someone grabs my wrist and pulls me towards them, I don't want this. Someone pulls me, okay, you want me this way, do you? I will go exactly the direction that they're taking me. And it usually comes as a tremendous surprise, because they're expecting resistance. And when you don't give any resistance, what happens is they become unbalanced. And then of course, they're vulnerable. And when people are vulnerable, then possibilities of resolution come about. On the mat, that usually means someone goes to the floor. But in any dispute, if you go with it and people start to feel vulnerable, suddenly they're looking for a solution rather than to create a problem, I would say. All right, so any other thoughts or offerings? Finn?
That's really interesting to think about the counter force, the opposing force, and just thinking about if you do take it to the mat, then does the ground then take up the slack of providing that force?
Yeah.
So, but
I sort of don't want to get too heavy, but you kind of want to think that you are the center of your universe always. And if you're the center of the universe and thinking about that tornado, all that stuff is going on around you, but you're the still point. You're always seeking to be the still point in the storm, and letting the chaos go on around you, but you're in total control. And that's exactly how you want to feel in Aikido. There may be chaos going on around you, but you always feel in total control of the space and the time and the energy.
being aware of the shadow or the figure on the ground. And, yeah, really interesting. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Quentin, as you were talking before about circles and the different possibilities, it just came up to me, you know, Yanni, our sensei who passed away a few years ago, just came to me. Actually, it's a technique, it's not really a technique that is used in Aikido by itself, but it's using like the circle that we use in an ikkyo, for example.
Yep.
The circle that we use in an ikkyo, he was using it to create, using both hands moving parallel at the same time, to create a protective shield in front of the body. I can show what he was, you know, he meant. Yeah, it was like that.
And back a little bit more, Dimitri.
Yeah.
Okay.
For example, the normal like circle we use in an ikkyo.
Yeah.
Okay, like moving two hands together, for example, but moving from the center, not from the shoulders.
Yes.
So then if you start moving fast from the center, you create like, actually we're practicing a knife attack with this. And if you spin like really fast, then the knife cannot enter your space. It was really interesting. It just, when you talked about the circular movements, I just remember
the
that.
way you demonstrated it just confirmed this idea that you don't just let the arm doing it, your whole body really enters this.
Yeah, totally.
So whatever, especially when you're in movement, everything has to be aligned. You can't let your chest or your head lead or your feet lead or your hips lead. Everything's traveling through on this lovely line that is supported from your feet right through to your head. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Are we done?
Lovely.
Good. All right.
Yep.
So, as always, I am open to suggestions as to things you'd like to look up. So, if you do have one, then just message me and we'll take a look. Otherwise, thank you for showing up, guys and girls. And I will see some of you on Thursday, and others I will see maybe next Tuesday. All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Quentin.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.